Hello, algebra students. Enough of the examples where I tell you how to simplify. Directions on this one just say simplify or indicate that the expression cannot be simplified. Again, a simplifying is just following the symbols that we see as much as possible. So if the symbols say multiply, we multiply. If they say add, we add, so on and so forth. So basically, you got to be able to read the symbols. So let's look at this first example here. Notice how this 5r in front is shoved up against the parentheses. That is multiplying. And so we have 5r times r squared. One of the trickiest things about algebra when we start simplifying expressions, get it all mixed up, is people mix up the rules for addition and subtraction. So know what you're doing when you're doing it. Right now we're multiplying. So when we multiply, we get the number or coefficient out front. Well, there's only one coefficient number with its feet on the floor, right? I don't count exponents as coefficients. And then when we have repeated factors like we do right here, we have r multiplying more than once, we use exponents to tell you how many factors of r we have multiplying. So we have some factors of r. How many? Well, we had 1 right here. And then 2, 3 right there, right? R squared means r times r. So we have a total of 3 r's multiplying. So I'll write r to the third power. That's 5r to the third power. Now let's compare that to this next example over here on the right. This guy says 5r plus r squared. Now we got to think back to our rules of adding, subtracting, not multiplying, right? So the main thing to remember with adding, subtracting is you can only combine like terms. And we don't have like terms here. This is an r term. This is an r squared term. The variable portion is not identical, so they're not like. I cannot simplify this. It's already simplified. Okay, let's look down here, bottom left, 5r. And then notice how the 5r is shoved up against parentheses again this time, but this time there's more than one term in the parentheses. I'm not just going to say 5r times r plus 2. This is what 5r times r plus 2 looks like. I'm going to say 5r times the quantity of r plus 2, or 5r times the sum of r and 2, to give you a verbal signal that that 5r is multiplying by that entire grouping. And why does it matter? Well, it matters because when you have something multiplying with a grouping, you have to multiply with every term in the parentheses. I'm going to multiply 5r by r, but I'm also going to multiply it by positive 2. So 5r times r, the only coefficient is 5, and r times r is 2 factors of r, or 2 r's multiplying, r to the second power. And now 5r times positive 2. Well, 5 times positive 2 is 10, and there was an r in there multiplying, so I'll just shove him on the back side. And now, again, there is still another symbol here. There's an addition symbol, so if you can do it, you should. But notice, like in the last example, this is some number of r squareds. This is some number of r's. Nothing I can really do here. This is already simplified. 5r squared plus 10r. Last example here. Now, we see multiplication again. How do I know it's multiplication? Well, I see this parentheses shoved up against this parentheses, so there's multiplication going on, the group times the group. There's also addition, but currently I can't do the addition. Take a look inside this grouping. 5r plus 2 is grouped together, so in theory I would start there, except for those aren't like terms, right? One's an r term and one's a constant. Can't add them. Same thing here. One's an r term and one's a constant, a plain old number. Can't add them. And so I'm going to have to go straight to the multiplication. But we learned how to multiply groupings. You just pass out every term in the first parentheses to every term in the second parentheses. Let's do that. Let's start with the first term in the first parentheses. That's 5r times the first term in the next parentheses. 5r times r is 5r squared. Now 5r times positive 5. Again, I read that as positive 5 when I'm multiplying. And I get plus or positive 25r. Positive 2 times r gives me positive or plus 2r. And positive 2 times positive 5 give me positive 10 or plus 10. And now this time you can see that I do have some like terms that I can combine. There's only one r squared term, but I see two r terms, positive 25r and positive 2r. I can combine them. It'll be positive or plus 27r. But since there are no other r squared terms, that r squared term we have will just drop. And no other constant terms, that constant we have will just drop. And there's my final answer. 5r squared plus 27r plus 10. Okay, you guys, I am super proud of you. Make sure that you practice this skill of going back and forth between the rules of addition and multiplication, or addition, subtraction, and multiplication, because you're going to have examples that have both in them, and you need to not panic when I have both in the same example. All right, you guys, happy learning.